There is a power that lies dormant within each of us, a creative force waiting to be awakened. Potentials of mind, science barely understands. Harnessing the energies of consciousness is the next chapter in human evolution. Join us as we explore the secrets of mind and the technology and people behind the revolution. This is the Mind Warrior Project. This is Zygon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Mind Warrior podcast. I'm Rob Hopping. In this episode, Dane and I talk about paradigms, what they are, how they affect personal growth, and ultimately human evolution. The idea of paradigms being a trap literally means being confined by a set of beliefs that prevents us from seeing beyond the walls of our paradigms, to consider new ideas and perspectives, and to realize our full potential. So, Dane, you and I have often talked about paradigms and how they prevent people from considering anything that doesn't fit into their belief system. Why is it so difficult for people to break out of a paradigm trap?
Yeah, and in fact, I call that paradigm trap paradigm paralysis because the mind freezes up and can't move off its position. And why this episode about paradigms is so important to our success in life, our general well-being, is because it's the whole enchilada, in my opinion, with regarding belief systems and how we operate our lives.
Right.
So I think probably to get started, we probably just need to define paradigm. What is it and what does it mean? So here's what Webster's dictionary says: a set of assumptions, concepts, values, and practices that constitutes a way of viewing reality for the community that shares them, especially in an intellectual discipline. So it is a belief system. It is about a mindset. And it's a personal truth that you base most of your decisions around. And so what the mind does is it filters information that's input based on your own personal paradigm, which could have been developed from childhood. It could have been developed from the media inputs. It could be developed from your social network. But this is the reason why it's so difficult to debate other people on politics and religion, because it bumps up against their paradigms if they're different from yours, and it triggers a fight or flight response in the mind.
Right. And, it is a filter. We as human beings have those sets of beliefs in our operating system. It's how we move through the world. It's how we see things. It's how we process information. It's how we take it in and process it through those filters.
Right. And so what paradigm paralysis is really it causes your brain to shut down its rational thinking. Because what happens is you have an emotional reaction to a new idea that's in conflict with your worldview. So rather than just seeing it as an opposing idea, people tend to ascribe their sense of survival to it. And so that's why they get angry.
Right. And there is no room for rational thought. There's no room for, say, a reasonable discussion when it comes to hitting the wall of someone's paradigm. Emotion kicks in, and emotion wins every time.
And that's the problem. So the problem is not being able to hold two opposing views in your mind at the same time. In other words, you have to be right. In other words, the world doesn't work. The world's upside down if somebody else has a different paradigm than yours or a different belief system.
Exactly. Looking back in history, people trapped by their paradigms have caused just profound suffering. In some of the darkest chapters in our history, like the Crusades, the Holocaust, to the Rwanda genocide and slavery.
It's amazing. It is amazing the depth of it and how the course of human history has been infected by, people having to defend their paradigms.
Right, exactly.
And think about even how it's impacted science. Galileo, this was the genius that believed that the earth rotated around the sun, was convicted of heresy.
Right.
And the Catholic Church made him spend the rest of his life under house arrest.
Right.
It took 300 years from that incident for the church to finally admit that Galileo was right and to be able to clear his name.
And the power of the church holding everyone to adhere to. Yes, we believe that.
And why? And why? Think about why. Why was it so important to the church to not have the earth be the center of the universe?
Right. Well, it went against their fundamental belief that the universe rotated around the earth.
So it obviously threatened them. It threatened their, not just only their belief system, but it threatened their power structure.
That was the primary issue. It threatened them. So let's dig into paradigms. Let's dig into how they're created and then programmed into us.
As you know, we've talked about this, and it's created over a long period of time from the indoctrination we get going to school, the value system that our parents give to us, the social circles and the culture that we're raised in.
Right.
And so let's say you grow up in a religious family, you're likely to have adopted that religious value system and mindset. Or you join a group, and that group, let's say, has a certain set of values or beliefs, and you want to be part of that group. It's important to you from a standpoint of your social status to be part of that group. So you'll over time accept and adopt those values.
Right. And the longer you have that belief system, the longer you have that paradigm and you stay within the boundaries of that paradigm, as you age, the stronger it becomes.
Exactly. And especially if you are a leader or a power person in one of those groups where that paradigm is being established. Then, because of that, like we talked about the example of the church, you have more of a reason to want to maintain and believe it. So it's harder to accept outside input.
Right. And one way in which those paradigms are strengthened is to stay within the circle of those who share that same view.
Exactly. And think about the amount of information that we receive every day. All of it is filtered through your paradigm.
Right.
The people you interact with, the conversations you have, the news stories that you read. Everything is analyzed and measured by how you perceive the world.
Right.
So we have to constantly decide if we take in this new information, if it's aligned or in conflict with our beliefs. And if it is in conflict with our beliefs, oftentimes it's rejected.
Right. So let's talk about some examples, and let's talk about the big issue right now, which is the COVID.
It's really a perfect example, and it's like a paradigm that's being created. I mean, look at the effort that it's taken to create this paradigm about the power of COVID and how bad it was if you didn't get vaccinated, and people are lining up to defend that paradigm. In other words, get the vaccine, or you're going to be responsible for more COVID deaths. I mean, it's irrational. It makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
But for those that hold that belief, there's zero room for discussion. In fact, they're so threatened by opposition to that paradigm that they're willing to suspend individual rights and freedoms.
So why? Why, when someone threatens your paradigm, and in this case, it's to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine, your brain sees it as life or death? You feel like you have to defend it. So is this peer pressure? Is it fear that you could be wrong? Or if you don't defend your paradigm, you'll be ostracized and kicked off the team?
It's all of that that's tied to strong emotions that deal with your survival in your mind. It's that primitive brain. Remember in our podcast with Ken Kais, we talked about emotion-backed demands, and people who hold their beliefs so strongly, they demand that they be right versus being happy. In other words, this need to be right exceeds the need to be happy.
Right.
Think about that. What happens when you threaten someone's paradigm? How do they react?
Well, they get angry. You can see it in their face and in their body language.
And how does it make you feel?
It's really uncomfortable, and especially if I know the person well, and it usually happens unexpectedly during a casual conversation.
Yeah, when beliefs are so hardened by emotions and these emotion-backed addictive demands, logic and reason and objectivity, boom, it's out the window.
Right. There are so many examples of the power of the paradigm causing horrific results. I mean, the religious wars of the Crusades, the genocide of the Holocaust, the millions who died during Mao's Cultural Revolution. it's hard to wrap your mind around how this could have happened, how humans could have been responsible for so much death and destruction.
And, if you analyze those examples, you'll find a common thread. They're all instigated and led by individuals who created the powerful paradigms or reinforced them.
Mm-hmm.
Belief systems that have exploited basic human needs and desires through power, greed, fear, survival. In other words, they use that to manipulate the people's behavior.
So Stalin, Hitler, Mao, so they created paradigms that tapped into basic human needs and desires. But how did they get their followers to commit such atrocities?
It's a really good question. And it's something I've thought about for years, and I've thought about especially, Nazi Germany. In other words, how are you able to move a whole civilization and do horrific, horrible things and maintain that power structure? Because people are basically good.
Yeah.
They're not bad. They're not evil. They're basically good. So how did you do that? How was it possible to to kill, to murder 6 million people in front of the whole world? And not have the world be so outraged that it would jump in. Well, here's an example. I don't know if you remember the Milgram experiments.
Sure.
Back in the 60s.
Right.
Stanley Milgram, who was a Yale researcher, conducted a series of experiments that measured the willingness of his study participants to obey an authority figure. In other words, he wanted to see whether or not people would just follow along if somebody looked like they were in authority. So the participants were instructed to punish the test subjects with electrical shocks if they answered certain questions incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to the experiments, he surveyed the graduate students and the medical school professors and the people that were, involved to predict the experiment's results. And it turned out that every prediction was really far below the final results. Of the 40 study participants in the first experiment, 65% of them administered the highest, potentially deadly, a 450 volt shock to the person in the other room. And 100%, based upon the authority figure of somebody in a white coat, administered shocks of at least 300 volts.
Amazing and really scary.
Yeah, actually the experiment is totally amazing, and it kind of gives some credence to why would somebody do that? In other words, why? So literally, these are college students that are being paid to administer the kind of this phony test to the person in the other room, and the person in the other room is screaming that they're killing them.
Right.
And the administrator who's wearing a white lab coat says, no, go ahead, administer the punishment. And they do it.
Right, exactly. And from what I've read, that Milgram was totally blown away by the results. And they expanded it and continued to do the experiment, not only in this country, but around the world, with the same results.
Yeah. So even though the researchers used sophisticated protocols to prod the participants to administer the deadly shocks, they never lied to them.
Right.
They always gave them an opportunity to opt out and to not administer the punishment, but they did it anyway.
They did it anyway.
So why?
Right.
So why would somebody put Jews on a train and send them to Auschwitz to be killed and burned in the ovens? Why would a society allow that?
Well, there has to be a fear component in this. Like Mao created this culture of fear to achieve his political objectives. And fear can be really an intense and irrational instinct, an emotion that is particularly vulnerable to manipulation. So loss of personal freedoms, job loss, alienation, financial loss. I mean, all kinds of really terrible things can happen to someone as a result of this fear.
Yeah, fear is exactly one of the components of power. And you can use that fear initially, but then actually create a paradigm around it. In other words, the Jews are bad. That's basically what the Hitler regime was able to make people believe. So because they had to follow, there was no way that they could control all the people.
Right.
They had to actually create a paradigm of control to allow that to happen. So these regimes use the carrot and the stick method. to control the masses. Do as you're told, and you'll be taken care of. Disobey, and terrible things will happen to you
Right.
and everyone else that you know.
Right.
And that's not that different right now. In other words, if you don't have the vaccine and you don't have the vaccine passport, you're not admitted into certain places. In other words, we literally have the non-vaccine section in the stadium.
Exactly. You know what Hitler did, because they knew that if they didn't do this, there would be room for some doubt. And what they did was decide to eliminate every Jewish person in Germany, like rid Germany of Jews, so that no one could know the human being who happened to be Jewish. Because once that happened, someone could go, well, I know this guy. He's a good person. He's not an evil, horrible, terrible creature like you say he is. So they made sure.
So the paradigm that they had to create was they're inferior. They're going to take things away from you. They're the reason why our society doesn't function as well as it could.
Right. And don't question it. And plus you have no reason to question it, right? You don't know anyone. We've taken care of that for you. We've eliminated them off the face of the earth.
And you know what's scary? It wasn't that long ago.
I know.
It wasn't that long ago. And look at where we're at right now.
Right.
Has those human desires for power and greed and control and manipulation, have they gone away? No. It's the reason why America has a constitution.
Right.
It's the reason why we have the system structured the way that it is to prevent tyranny from taking over.
So here we are. We're at a point in our history when we have the luxury of looking back and seeing those tragic results. It's a harsh characterization, but these were truly evil humans who used paradigms to control and destroy millions of people. So the truth is, we do have a choice, and we can give in to those paradigms that destroy our freedoms, or reject them for an open mind that's non-judgmental and only sees limitless possibilities.
Well, it takes a new mind to see a new world. And that's the key. The key to personal growth, the key to mind development, the key to human potential, the key to our future as humanity is being able to craft this new mind that will actually usher in this new world.
Right.
And you can't be a mind warrior if you're trapped by your paradigms.
You're right. It defies the definition of what a mind warrior is.
You have to be willing to see new information that doesn't get filtered and colored by your paradigm mindset. Now, it's difficult to do. And without making a conscious effort, because everything is shaded otherwise, you're going to end up rejecting ideas that are opposed to your paradigm.
Right.
Some examples. Money is the root of all evil. Well, is it? No. All millionaires do bad things to get rich. They take it from others. And so if you have that paradigm, you're going to create from that mindset a reality that mirrors that paradigm.
Right, exactly.
And a simple thing that we work with our members about is trying to reframe how they see themselves. And so if they believe themselves to be failures, or everything I do, I set myself up for failure. I can't achieve anything. Something happens, bad people will come and take it away from me. So if you believe that's true, and it's a part of your core belief system, even on a conscious level, you try to, talk yourself out of that, with a positive mindset, it doesn't work.
Let's do a simple test. Come up with a way of knowing if you are holding a set of beliefs, or even one singular belief, that is causing problems for you. What would that be? Let's come up with some way in which to do that.
Well, I think the first thing is awareness. And just asking yourself, do I have an emotional reaction to that idea, that question, or that situation that I'm being confronted with? And that's a Ken Kai's thing. In other words, am I addicted to my perception or my point of view?
Right, exactly.
And seeing it as an idea. So why can't you have two opposing ideas inside your mind at the same time and play with them? That's actually a sign of intellect and intelligence, is being able to hold two opposing ideas at the same time and not be emotionally attached to either.
Right. I'm acknowledging that I'm having this emotional reaction. I'm acknowledging I can feel it. What do? I need to stop. I need to just pause right now.
Right. Right, because what you're going to do is you're going to immediately throw it out and reject it, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and there may be some content in this opposing idea that you could learn from that's of value. So, and then I think the second point would be acceptance.
Right.
So, can I accept that I'm wrong about everything that I believe to be true?
It's huge.
Yeah, can I, in other words, am I willing to look at the world and say, what if I'm wrong?
That takes a tremendous amount of effort. Like you said, you have to first acknowledge that you are having this reaction, and then it's really questioning. I mean, that's powerful. If you can question your beliefs.
And some of the smartest people I've ever met have this kind of innocence about their way of looking at things that's actually very intriguing, and it's wonderful, actually, is that they believe they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they're brilliant, I mean, they can write brilliantly, they come up with brilliant ideas, but at their core, they're kind of like they're constantly pondering and going, gosh, the more I seem to learn or take in, the less I really know. And it's like, I don't actually know anything.
Exactly. And there's sort of a childlike quality to that. They're asking that question. Why do I believe this?
And you know why? You get to a level where what's more important than anything is truth.
Right.
So you're seeking truth, and you realize that all the so-called truths that you think you have can be dashed, can be broken, can be, challenged. So you go, well, maybe I don't know the truth.
To acknowledge what you don't know is probably one of the hardest things to do, because we so need to want whatever it is we believe to be correct.
And accept the fact that you're operating under a paradigm.
Right.
Just accept that. Just accept the fact that you might be right, and obviously you are operating under that paradigm because you want to, be successful in life and have a good life, but it might not be true.
And maybe that's a really good way to look at this, is to ask yourself that question. Is what I believe true?
Right.
And then that begins your query into that particular belief.
And then once you start breaking it down, are you willing to do what's necessary to change the way you see the world?
Right.
And here's the caveat. This isn't something that's a simple thing to do.
No.
There isn't a specific protocol or methodology for this. It's really just having an awareness that what you believe may not actually be true.
Right.
And so then these are just some ways of starting to peck away at that, because if you automatically just reject the world of new ideas, you're not going to be able to have a new mind.
Is it possible to have multiple paradigms?
I think it is. I think what happens is, especially while you're in what's called a paradigm shift and you're adopting a new paradigm or a new way, you're going to have to hold those two different opposing ideas, and there's going to be a blending. So it took you your entire life to create the paradigm that you have. It's encrusted within you. So the paradigm shift doesn't occur overnight.
Right.
The paradigm shift, or the way of you seeing the world differently, oftentimes is a slow process. So yeah, so I would say the answer is yes, is that the willingness for you to accept other ideas along with your opposing idea at the same time, I think it's essential.
Okay. Let me give an example of what I was thinking of. Let's say you have strong religious beliefs, and you also have a paradigm of how to conduct business. Is it possible that conflict can arise with your religious paradigm and your business paradigm?
Absolutely. And some people resolve that by just setting it aside and compartmentalizing it.
Okay.
Other people shift their business to, let's say, incorporate their moral code.
So I'm going to guess that even the idea of a paradigm or a system of beliefs isn't really considered by most people until there's a circumstance that causes them to have to consider it.
Well, I don't think they're even considering it. I don't think people even understand what's going on.
Okay.
I don't think they're even aware. I think there's just internal conflict. So that's having that glitch in your stomach, or that weird feeling of like, hey, this doesn't feel right to me. I don't know why I'm doing this, or, I keep going to the same church over and over and over because my wife goes, or because I think I'm supposed to go, but I don't believe a word they're saying.
Right.
It's incongruent. In other words, if your life is incongruent with your paradigms, eventually something's got to give.
Right. Let's move to shifting your paradigm. So we've talked about awareness and an acceptance, and then taking action. So what about those specific actions that you can take?
Well, I think the first thing is, again, identifying what habits you want to change or what your objective is.
Okay.
So if your objective is, I want to make a lot of money, and you have a belief system that you know is incongruent with that, you have to do something about that. You have to change your internal programming about how you see the world so that it fits.
Okay. So you recognize that. I want to change this habit. I want to change this belief. So I need to do that. So then what? What do you do to follow that up with?
Well, first of all, you have your goals about what you want to do. Changing your internal beliefs on a conscious level is extremely difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have a technology that does that. You have to have a capability to do that. In the old days, that was self-talk.
Right.
So you repetitively did self-talk. You looked in the mirror and you told yourself you made a lot of money. You went out and you faked it until you made it. It's a very, very difficult process. And then you would set yourself up for failure, and people got frustrated, and so on and so forth.
But there are new technologies, obviously, that have emerged.
That was the point of Zygon. In other words, that was the point of why I started the company and was looking for ways to be able to shift your belief system and your worldview on an internal level, because I knew that was the secret that would then be able to line up with what you were doing action-wise in the real world.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's totally effortless. You still have to take action on an external sense. But if your internal paradigms match what your external action items are, bingo, it'll line up.
Those programs that are embedded internally are what directs us. It causes us to take action, to see things a certain way because of that paradigm.
Right.
What is truly amazing about the mind scripting technology of Zygon is that it goes right past that conscious mind and goes right to where those programs are stored. And there is a reprogramming that goes on, which is the key to all of this.
So I love this phrase. The eyes can't see if the mind is blind.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a quick example. So we talked about the reticular activating system before, and this idea that we filter all this information. We just had a long conversation about paradigms and how that filtration process works. So let's just say, for example, you just bought a new car. You just bought a Tesla,
okay,
right? And you didn't really know anything about EVs, electric vehicles or whatever, but you just bought a Tesla. Before you bought that Tesla, you hardly saw any of them on the road.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, you buy one of these things. They're everywhere.
Right.
It's like you went, wait a second. I only saw like 2 or 3 before. Now I see there's a gazillion of these cars driving around. You thought, wow, I never even knew that many existed. Well, it's because your mind was filtering out that information. So the mind is blind to possibilities. You don't see it if your mind is closed to it.
I think everyone can relate to that. And I realize it's because it's the truth, no matter what it is. I mean, if it's the Tesla example, it could be a relationship example, but we've all experienced that.
So if your internal programming is all of a sudden aligned toward, let's say, your goal, which is, let's say, I want to make a lot of money, and it accepts the possibility that you're deserving of a lot of money, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, your mind isn't shut off and blind to that. And now your eyes can see opportunities will just fall in your lap like you wouldn't believe. You're actually going to go, is this magic? Is this some magical power? And we can talk about the law of attraction, all that stuff later. But actually, on a more practical, concrete level, it's just all of a sudden your mind is no longer blind. Your paradigm has shifted internally. It isn't even something you're aware of. It's just all of a sudden people will start coming into your life. You will start seeing opportunities. Ideas will flow to you that hadn't flowed to you before. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, you've got this, smorgasbord of opportunities.
Exactly. And I would highly recommend to our listeners that haven't heard it to go to that episode that talks about the law of attraction, because it speaks directly to what we're talking about here.
Right.
Let's talk about freedom and our basic human right to be free. The Constitution guarantees certain rights and freedoms to believe what we want, to speak freely, to publish our words without censorship or retribution by the government.
Exactly. And the ultimate impact of paradigms that are imposed upon us that restrict our rights is not only that we lose our freedom as individuals, but we lose our freedom to develop our full potential. And that's the promise of America, was that people could come here and be anything they wanted to be.
So what's the answer? How do we create a world where people can be true to themselves, develop their potential without fear, and be totally free? What needs to happen?
Well, let's imagine that world.
Okay.
What would it feel like? How would people interact with each other? Would there be wars, hatred, sadness, suffering?
Well, Ken Kai said that love is the answer, that if we loved ourselves and each other unconditionally, we would have a paradise on earth.
And I agree with that, but is that a platitude? How do we get there?
First, we eliminate destructive paradigms.
Well, that's correct, but then what do you replace them with?
Great question. Maybe it is a new perspective, one that is positive, it's non-judgmental, and open to life's possibilities.
Remember, it takes a new mind to see a new world. So we need a new paradigm that enables a new worldview, and that's the key to everything. And we provide some tools to do that at an individual level, but the question, you're right, is how do we as a society create that?
So a new paradigm.
Yes, an open mind paradigm, a paradigm of freedom where ideas and beliefs are not judged and immediately dismissed because they don't fit, where the trap of orthodoxy doesn't challenge personal views and perspectives, a paradigm of acceptance of all things.
Right. A paradigm of acceptance. So how do we get there?
Well, first, everyone needs to take the paradigm test that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And this is not a one and done thing. You need to ask yourself those questions every day as you're feeling conflicted by the information that's coming at you.
Right.
Because our paradigms are so ingrained in us, the only way to shift that is to work on yourself. So awareness, acceptance, action.
Right.
True mind warriors are able to set aside their egos and think about their paradigms and ask themselves why they react to certain ideas and beliefs emotionally. Again, we're seekers of truth.
Right.
And to seek and understand why they act emotionally to those ideas.
Mm.
So everyone just needs to engage in this process of self-awareness and discover who they are and why they see the world the way they do. And I believe this open mind paradigm is the key to moving humanity in a positive direction and toward a positive future. I mean, it's easier said than done. It takes a lot of effort. But if enough people are aware that it's their paradigm that's causing their paralysis, the reason why they're stuck is because of their paradigm. And we just have to change one mind at a time.
Right. One mind at a time.
Right.
This ends our episode on paradigms and the paradigm trap. So I want to thank Dane and thank you everyone for listening. And remember, it takes a new mind to see a new world. So until next time, enjoy the journey.
There is a power that lies dormant within each of us, a creative force waiting to be awakened. Potentials of mind, science barely understands. Harnessing the energies of consciousness is the next chapter in human evolution. Join us as we explore the secrets of mind and the technology and people behind the revolution. This is the Mind Warrior Project. This is Zygon.